Erev Shabbat Shalom, Riverdale Minyan. During my years of study in Israel and yeshiva, I fancied myself quite the Tanakh student. I was incredibly proud of finding at one point what I thought was a doozy of a textual error. This was before I realized that pretty much any question that could be raised concerning the Torah's words has already been asked and has already been answered. The Torah in this week's Parsha of Bamidbar Sinai twice mentions the names of the Nisiim, the princes of the 12 tribes. One is the Nasi of God, Eliasaph ben Deuel. He shows up again in next week's Parsha of Naso when the Torah details the gifts brought on the 12 days of Matanot to the Mishkan. But what was his name again? Because you see, while his name is again Eliasaph ben Deuel in Parshat Naso, the second time this week's Parsha names this person, it calls him Eliasaph ben Reuel. Why is there this inconsistency? So I thought this was a huge question. And this could be a real problem, because if we think the Torah's text is sacred, then every letter must be correct. We can't allow for typos, even if they seem insignificant. I mean, who cares what this guy's father's name was? Or, mistakes that are easy to explain. The letters Dalet and Resh are extremely similar. But if we allow for an incorrect letter, then we open the floodgates, and any part of the text could be a mistake. But do not worry, there are answers. Ramban says that the Torah changes names evenly, b'ta'am shaveh, and he explains that Eliasaph's father knew God, Deuel, means he knew God, and he also had the idea, the ra'ayon, Reuel, of God in his heart. He was therefore known by both names. Radak explains, as did my son-in-law, that the sounds of Dalet and of Resh, when they're pronounced properly and authentically, are very, very similar when they are authentically pronounced. So those two names are really practically the same, Deuel and Reuel. But my favorite explanation is that of the 19th century Rabbi Shmuel David Luchato, the Shadal, who writes that Eliasaph's father's name was really a combination of the two. It was Jeruel. Sometimes he would drop the Dalet, sometimes he would drop the Resh. I never understood this until I met a South African guy in yeshiva. His name was Rael. It turned out that Rael was short for Yisrael. His name was Israel. In America, had he been born on the Lower East Side, we would have called him Izzy. But in South Africa, he was Rael. He was Israel. He was Izzy. He was Rael all at once. That's Jeruel. I think sometimes we worry that we're inconsistent. I talk to parents all the time at school who worry that their kids are inconsistent. In school, they behave one way. At home, they behave a different way. Why can't we just pick a personality type and stay with it? But part of growth, whether it's for kids or adults, is trying out different personality styles in different settings. And I tell parents it's always a good sign when the kids are less well behaved at home than they are in school, because it shows that they feel safe there. Furthermore, I think it's a life skill to learn to behave differently in different situations. Do we act the same when we're at work as we do when we're in shul, or as we do when we're at home, or as we do when we're at a simcha or at a dinner party? Part of functioning as an adult, as a successful adult, is knowing when and how to behave in what way. I can drink with any tinker in his own language during my life, brags young Prince Hal to his friends in Shakespeare's Henry IV, Part 1. Prince Hal understands that different types of people speak different languages. It's part of what makes him such a wonderful, successful leader when he becomes King Henry. My professor James Shapiro explained to us. But we also need to identify and remember our core midot, no matter what the differences in our behavior or speech are in different situations or different settings. Jeruel was always consistent in his values, no matter what name they called him. He always knew God. He always had that idea of God in his heart. There are shivim panim la Torah. There are 70 ways to access and reflect the Torah. Shavuot is coming, the holiday of Matan Torah, and we should celebrate how much we have all grown this year since last Shavuot when we were locked down. All the ways we have learned to navigate a variety of situations and recommit for them. Recommit the importance of what those core values are for each of us. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach. Look forward to see you in Shul.